Okay, thank you all for coming. Let's get started. I have to say that, in a lifetime of being involved in science, there were few things I can remember as being really actually as moving as the Chan Zuckerberg announcement a little while ago. I mean, just to see the scale of their thinking, the ability to think about the possibilities of what could happen, over 80 years, and also the ability to think about how to organize it. And what struck me listening to the announcement, and I hope all of you have watched the video, you really should, because I mean, even independent of anything else, just as an experience to see the thought that they put in, the time and the preparation they put into thinking about how to make it all work, and the sophistication of coming to realize by talking to people that we don't have the tools yet, or even a lot of the knowledge that we need, but that they could create an environment in which it's possible to do that. Well, I personally just found it to be one of the most exciting things I've ever seen. And I guess what I would say is, as a community, we're just so lucky that we're, that we've been included and able to be a part of their vision to help realize it. And I think it's incumbent on us to rise to the occasion and think really deeply about what's happening here. All of you will be thinking about it, of course, in the context of immediate opportunities, but I'd urge you also to just take some time and really reflect deeply on what you think is really, where could we really apply ourselves in a way that would open things up in ways that we haven't been able to think about because we've been so constrained by environments and resources and assumptions. And all of that can just be blown open, I think, in the context of what's being contemplated here. And none of this would have happened unless there were some wonderful, wonderful scientists helping to make this happen, and 3 of them are here today. 2 of them, of course, our own Bob Tejan and Jennifer Doudna, who I won't say more about, but of course also Joe DeRisi visiting us today, and thank you, Joe, for coming from UCSF. And Joe's an extraordinary person, and those of you who know him, I've only just come to know him very recently, but he's obviously astonishingly creative, and that's been recognized a lot of different ways. He's been the recipient of a MacArthur Fellowship, and he's a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the National Academy of Sciences, and he's done some amazing work in which he has created a diagnostic tool called the Virochip that contains DNA from every virus ever discovered. Is that accurate, or nearly, or sequencing? All right, but nonetheless, so he's had an incredible career of discovery. And he, I think, has played a vital role, along with the other 2 folks who are here today, in talking with Priscilla Chan and Mark Zuckerberg in the earliest stages. And so as this opportunity now suddenly becomes more and more real, it's just so wonderful that we could have the 3 of them here to talk with us. And so I think, we're going to maybe ask Bob to say a few words at the beginning, because he's been part of the group helping to think about this from the very beginning, and maybe Jennifer can say a few words, and then we'll turn it over to Joe, who's going to give you some of his vision, and then we'll just open it up for an open discussion. So, Bob.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, it's incredibly inspiring, actually, to have met with Priscilla and Mark and to spent the last year and a half discussing with them their vision, and then trying to craft how to actually make the most efficient use of their resources, which is quite considerable. And I think it's moving in a really exciting direction. I don't want to spend a lot of time here, because I think ultimately the most important thing for today is for you to hear directly from Joe what his and Steve Quake's vision is for the Biohub. But I wanted to say a few words not just about the Biohub, but the bigger program of the CZI, which, if you saw the announcement, really is a much bigger umbrella that will cover a big chunk of it is science. There's a education component. There's also kind of an advocacy policy component, which I think is going to end up being very, very important. And you know that I've been involved in that aspect of it, of trying to get different sources of funding for moving scientific discoveries and translational work forward, since relying solely on the state or the federal government has its limitations. Let me then back off and say that the overall program, of which the Biohub is right now probably the central piece of the CZI science program, which will be run by Corey Bargman, who I guess started this week at her job. And it was great to see Corey back from New York, back in the UCSF in the Bay Area. A couple of things that I just want you to think about. This first program that's been launched by the Biohub and is really sort of, I think, central to the way that Corey and others are thinking about it for the CZI in general, is this idea that we want to identify people, the best people, who are going to be able to do really creative stuff. And what you just heard from Paul is that do think outside of your normal boundaries. In fact, I would say that's going to be the thing that's going to be the most important for both the Biohub and the science program of the CZI, which is called the network. And in many ways, that is a little bit like the Hughes, where we're really trying to be talent scouts, looking for the very best science, not trying to prejudge what that science should be or should look like. In fact, the best thing that could happen is if you define an entirely new avenue of science that we're not even thinking about right now. And I think you've seen examples of that throughout the history of the Bay Area. So that's one thing. The second thing I want to emphasize is that this is the first time, and I've been thinking about this a long time, that the three campuses or the three institutions in the Bay Area can sort of pull in the same direction. Now, in many ways, you know that that's been going on anyway, sort of behind the scenes, but in a formal sort of recognized way, especially by the administration, is a huge step forward. So to work that closely and to all move in the same direction will give us, it'll make us so much more competitive, but I also think it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. I think that is the thing that probably motivates me and motivates Joe, I know, and it motivates Steve and Corey. So, and the last thing I want to say is I think there's going to be some amazing stuff that might also sort of bounce back from Facebook. Because one of the things that really motivated me to stay with spending many, many hours talking to Mark and Priscilla is this idea that we all know that our science, biology, is getting more and more quantitative. We're going to need huge advances in the computational side in many, many different types of computational tools. And you know how difficult it is to actually hire those types of people and keep them within the university setting. And I think the Facebook engineers probably see it the other way around as well, that they're doing really great things there. They have a fantastic career there, but they want to do more than that. And to me, the exciting thing is that the three universities plus the engineers and creative people at Facebook, that is an unbelievable combination. And I think it's unique to this area. I think that's why Mark wanted the Biohub to be here physically. I think it was very carefully chosen to be central to all of those 4 units, including the Facebook. So, so I just leave you with the thought, it's like starting the Hughes from scratch, and you're in it. And you get to help us think about how this is going to work. And you get to really think creatively about what capabilities you can bring to this enterprise. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. So I remember an incredible conversation I had about 4 years ago with Joe DeRisi, Steve Quake, Jonathan Weissman, and myself. We were sitting in a bar somewhere, and we were talking about, wouldn't it be amazing if you could actually find a way to bring together colleagues from the 3 great universities here in the Bay Area and somehow connect them with some of the incredible engineers in Silicon Valley. And it's astounding to me to think that here we are 4 years later and it's happening. And it's happening in a way that I think none of us at that time could have anticipated. But very exciting. I think I agree with everything that you heard already about the Biohub, and I would just add a couple of things. I think the vision is, and you'll hear more about this from Joe, but I think the idea is really to find a way to catalyze more interactions with our colleagues in the Bay Area. I've found myself that, I think the most creative science happens when you run into somebody that's doing something maybe entirely different than what you think about every day, but you suddenly realize that together you can do something really interesting. So I think that's something that would be, we really would love to see that happening even more than it already does. I think what Tej said about thinking outside the box, thinking beyond what each of us is working on in our individual labs and looking for opportunities to do things that involve bringing in a type of science that maybe isn't in our wheelhouse right now would be also something that we really would like to catalyze at the Biohub. And I think, we've all had the experience of thinking about technologies that might be very enabling, but it's often difficult to fund those kinds of efforts, especially in biology, I think. And so the hope is that the Biohub will also help to catalyze technology development that will in itself be very enabling for future discoveries. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe.
All right, thanks. Thank you so much for having me here. I got to take notes on both you guys' talks because you did describe the Biohub better than I could. So all those things that Tej and Jennifer were explaining are absolutely true. And my job here is to tell you a little bit more concrete about what the Biohub is doing and put it in context to the rest of the CZI, and then really do question and answer discussion, because that's where I find out we get a lot more of the concrete details out. And I especially want to talk about the investigator program, because that's the program that applications are going to be due for fairly soon. I want to make sure you have the information that's necessary so that you can apply for it. Okay, so first of all, what is the Biohub? The Biohub is an independent nonprofit. It's a 501c3 medical research organization affiliated with the 3 campuses, physically located 499 Illinois, directly across the street from the Benioff Children's Hospital. That space was formerly occupied by Illumina. They're still in some of the space. We're urging them to make haste and get the heck out. But they're hard to push around. But that total space is cumulatively 97,000 square feet. So it's not a small space, but not an enormous space either. And so there will be research projects and science that happens in the Biohub. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that, but there will not be sort of lab fiefdoms. Investigators will not be granted labs where they hold on until their cold, dead fingers let go. I mean, that's the way it works at UCSF. I'm on the School of Medicine Space Committee. I know this. This is not making it up. And so we're going to do project-based space, dynamically allocated. So let me just back up for a second. So it's an independent nonprofit. It is different than CZI Science. CZI Science is part of the whole Chan Zuckerberg initiative. CZI Science is the nationwide science program that is being run by Corey Bargman, and that is a $3 billion enterprise. So it's a major initiative, and she is just in the early days of formulating what that's going to look like and what kind of projects and things it's going to do. She's going to be holding a series of town hall meetings to discuss ideas and things, including here. And the leadership, the headquarters of the Chan Zuckerberg Science Initiative will be actually co-located in the Biohub, which that is also an important Bay Area coup, because we can influence and be a part of the discussions about what the nationwide science program is all about. And so Corey is actually showing up tomorrow. I just got an email from her. She doesn't have a key to get in the Biohub, so I think we can find a key. All right, so that's really exciting. The Chan Zuckerberg Initiative also is going to host a substantial engineering team that will be able to deploy into the different modules underneath it, like the Biohub and Chan Zuckerberg Science and Education and so on. And that's something Bob alluded to a little bit, but it's something to really take into consideration. So it's much more formalized than a few Facebook engineers that may want to do a sabbatical or something, although that we'd encourage that as well. They're going to actually bring in engineers to be actual full-time employees of the initiative, and they will deploy into modules. And it's not an insubstantial team. It's a very large team. I don't know, sure I'm not allowed to say the exact number, but it's much bigger than many small companies. And they're hiring a fantastic new chief technical officer. I don't know if they've announced this person's name yet, but it's going to be great. Okay, so what is inside the Biohub? It's an independent experiment. It is set to run for 10 years at the minimum. And at that 10-year experiment is a $600 million endeavor. And at the end of the 8 or 9 years, it's going to be judged as whether the experiment was a success or whether they iterate and need to reinvent it or whatnot. And hopefully we'll do a good job. But of course, Mark and Priscilla have a 100-year, 80-year time span on their vision on this. So they want to do this for the very, very long term. But our commitment is discreetly for 10 years right now. The Biohub, as Steve and I have envisioned it, is 3 main things: people, projects, and platforms. People is the investigator program. Tell you more about that in a second. And we'll spend probably the majority of time on that. So we'll get back to it in a minute. Platforms. Platforms are large capital investments and or instruments that are actually built in the Biohub that aren't available as commodity instruments. So new things that don't exist yet. And to that end, we want to provide an exceptionally large amount of space in the Biohub to building of new things. That's something that's always been near and dear to my heart and Steve's heart and many of the people we've worked with. And so engineering is going to be key and central to this. We're projecting at full build out an FTE count of 17 full-time engineers in the Biohub. So it's not an insignificant number of both mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and of course software engineering. But we want to attract our academic fellows into this as well, and so that's why we're particularly appealing to the engineering sciences, material sciences, electrical engineering, and computer science. I'll have more to say about that in a minute. So these platforms will be available to everybody. It's meant to enrich our whole community. We have a prototype facility like this at UCSF called the Center for Advanced Technology, the CAT. A lot of Berkeley people have come over and use it. It's an open door policy. You just can come in and use stuff whenever you want. You have to bring your own consumables for consumables. But that model, I would like to blow out onto a much larger scale. And so Stanford, Berkeley people, everybody can come to the facility to use these core instruments that are maybe unique in the world. So that's platforms. Projects, before I get to the people part where I want to spend most of the time. Projects, besides the platforms and the people are the majority of the budget. However, there is a small part of the budget that's devoted to internal research projects, and we felt it necessary that the Biohub do some internal research of its own. And to that end, there's 2 major projects: the Cell Atlas, which is a pretty grand, ambitious scheme to basically map out all cell identities and all cell states and all cell transitions of the body in both health and disease. And then a second launch project called the Infectious Disease Project, which encompasses both detection technology, response technology, treatment, as in therapeutics, and prevention, as in vaccines. So 4 major areas of emphasis there. And in each of these projects, Cell Atlas and ID, we will be recruiting team leaders. So these are faculty level people, but they're not being poached from the 3 universities. So team leaders would be sort of PhD levels that want to apply and maybe do something different. They might be people from industry. They might be outstanding postdocs that maybe don't want to do the traditional academic track, knowing that this is a limited 10-year engagement. So there's no tenure track affiliations that come with being a team leader, but it offers other unique opportunities. So I think it might be appealing to a certain set of people. And so we're just in the early days of beginning to launch the job announcements for that and sort of get project interviews underway for those. They're not going to be totally defined until we recruit those people completely. Those are the people aspect, or the internal launch projects aspects. And I don't have to talk about any of these aspects, but let me talk about the investigator programs. The investigator program, Bob talked a little bit about, it's taking bets on human capital, on human potential, finding great people with great ideas. And so it's much in the vein of the Hughes program and borrow a little bit from the Packard and other ideas as well. But the idea is that people with a kernel of a great idea, with proven potential of creativity or proven record of creativity in their past are likely to do very creative things in their future. And so the application is very simple. It's online right now, czbiohub.org. You can click on the apply thing and it takes you to the review site. Here's the application. It's your CV, your 5 most impactful publications. So like what are the 5 things that you've done in your scientific career, your entire career, that's made a difference? And then a very short, 3-page sort of description of the significance of your work in the past and of what you want to accomplish in the future. Not NIH style. We don't want to see specific game 1, 2, 3, 3, B, C, D, E, F, pH of the buffers 4.7. No. And so this is an opportunity to really think out, really beyond what you normally would propose, because we're not into proposing the next logical step or sort of something that should be funded by NIH. We're looking for the things that have a substantial risk exposure. A lot of these are going to fail, and that's okay. So, I had an interesting conversation. So Steve and I were talking to Mark. I don't even know if I should. I'm going to tell it. And we said, look. What's your appetite for risk here? If we had $1 million project and it completely failed, we'd feel pretty bad about that, and it might be kind of tough telling you. If we had a $20 million project and that fell on its face and was an utter disaster, we'd feel really bad about that. I don't know what your appetite for risk is, and Mark said, are you kidding me? I just spent $2 billion on virtual reality, and no one knows if that's going to work. Okay, point taken. So we have a mandate to do risky stuff, and we have a very large appetite for doing things that are not likely to succeed as long as they're big, impactful ideas. They are single user applications, so single person applies, but I've got a lot of requests. Well, what if I work with this person and that person? How do I do like a PO1 style application? We don't want a PO1. It's a single user application, but it's completely fair game to point out who your collaborators are and how you would integrate across the other campuses or other people at your own campus. Or, this is particularly important, how you would integrate across the other disciplines. So you might be a biologist that needs engineering or an engineer that needs biology, and say, this is how I tend to integrate, or I want to integrate with this for this big idea. I don't have that yet. I don't know who those people are, but that's okay. That's the idea is what it's about. Not that you've set up 15 collaboration agreements and have 20 signed letters of support and all that. Not important for this stage. We intend to award these by January. The applications are due in November. I think it's 1st or 2nd. I should know this top of my head. I think it's November 1st. And so that's coming up pretty soon. But the activation barrier for these is low. It is a short application online. So I encourage you all to do it. And I just looked at the numbers yesterday. By the size of this crowd, I'm not worrying about the Berkeley numbers. But the early applicants were a little low on the Berkeley side, but we've also seen not as great application numbers as we'd like to see from the areas of engineering, computer science, physics, math, stats, material science, and related fields. This is open to any discipline, to any academic senate member faculty at any career stage. That's about as open as it can get. Okay, with that, I want to get to question and answers. So let's take some questions and, fire them at me. I'm happy to answer any and all to the best of my ability.
Can I just start with one? Because I'm one of those physics engineering types who does things related to health, but on the energy side. So Dan Kamen here at Berkeley. How can we find out more about the capacity that's planned inside? And I ask that not in the details, but in the way there are certain things which I think are home run shots that would require teams that I'm not going to plan out in a $300,000 per year thing, but I'd like to think about in the bigger universe.
Yeah, so a lot of the internal, so that gets to our internal platforms and engineering team. And our first job is to hire the heads of those teams and the heads of engineering, because we're going to give them substantial leeway with hiring the teams underneath them, as would be fair. If you were starting a company, you'd do it like this too. And we are just beginning to have those interviews and get those job ads out there for those team leader positions. We just had our first interview for head of engineering. Fantastic individual with a lot of national lab experience, done some cool stuff. So I'm reluctant to say anything too concrete about those because a lot of it's going to be driven by those personalities that we get in.
But that's what I was asking, because not the details, but how you think about them, given that you're doing these things sort of in parallel.
Yeah.
You get the applications in, you're looking at teams.
Yep.
So, but that sounds sort of loose enough that good ideas have a chance to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we hope to leave that this is supposed to be sort of a force function to drive collaboration across the three. So we want to put enough, I'm sorry I'm using all these biology terms, we want to put enough chemoattractant in the Biohub that people show up to the Biohub to both use the facilities and the resources that are there. If they're not showing up and they're not using the resources, then the chemoattractant isn't good and we've missed the mark. And so we'll correct course on that. A question in the back.
I can be loud enough. I can't pick it up on my camera.
Excuse me. I didn't know I was on camera. Okay. Good to know.
The investigator program you mentioned is open to academic senate appointees at different stages of faculty. I personally am from the School of Optometry, and I have 2 other colleagues with me who are also from the School of Optometry. And we are a clinical program, but we also have a large pool of basic scientists. One of the things is there is a lot of talent that is not faculty and do not have academic senate appointments. And one of the reasons why we have a lot of them is because we are extremely interdisciplinary. So it seems a little bit self-defeating for us that basically we cannot apply according to the current
Right. So let me say a few words about that. So we struggled with this immensely, and this, let me make a couple points. First point is, this is the initial round of the investigator program, and it's not going to be the only round. There will be additional rounds with additional investigators. And this first experiment to try to get the most equitable situation across the 3 universities with the relative numbers involved in each, the Academic Senate was most equivalent to the Academic Council at Stanford and so on, that was the best way to achieve sort of an equitable 3-way situation. If we go non-academic, for example, Senate at UCSF, the health science professional line and the medical center line then come on line would be eligible for that. And there's great clinician and great scientists there, and I realize that. It does bring on an extra 5,000, 6,000 applicants, potentially. And so, you know, And it biases it very heavy towards UCSF with more towards Stanford, and Berkeley will not win in that competition statistically. So initially we have a more equitable arrangement, but we are going to explore in the next rounds how we open it up to non-academic faculty, because I've heard this complaint loud and clear. And when we will sort of correct course and sort of experiment with the investigator program in the subsequent round.
Maybe I misspoke. We are not non-academic faculty, but we are non-academic Senate faculty. So we don't have Senate appointments, but we are very much academic researchers. We are not faculty because we just aren't assistant professors. Most of us are either associate researchers or project scientists. Mm-hmm. But we have right. several more years after our PhD. That's the important thing that I want to do.
Right, and so we're going to be playing with that with our investigator program to open it up to individuals like you, because we realize that there's a talent pool there we're not tapping by just going in residence, ladder rank, and clinical professor of X, which is academic senate. I'll do a question in the front here, and then, well, actually, you already got the microphone in the back, so let me just, shortest pathway.
This is a quick one. Can you say approximately or maybe exactly how many appointments you intend to make at this first round and then maybe, ultimately?
Yes. So initially somewhere in the area of 45 to 55 appointments, although we are engaged in trying to actually raise additional funds and look into bringing those numbers even higher. Although maybe that some of that would be kept in reserve for round 2 and like when we play with some of the parameters of the program. But 45 to 55 is a safe estimate for this round. Let's go here first because she had her hand up first, and then we'll go back. It's a traveling salesman problem here.
So in some cases, our vision that may be attractive within this initiative requires the purchase of equipment which is not, maybe that is off the shelf, so nothing that will work within the platform, but there is a substantial amount, and by the nature of it, it's not going to be for one person, for one investigator, it's going to be for a number. So is this something that will not be contemplated within the present call, or how could it be taken in within the investigator program otherwise?
Yep, there's a couple ways to do this. So number one, an investigator could buy equipment with this. So let me say a word about the grant, and then I'll get to how we're thinking about equipment grants, which is kind of what you're getting at. The investigator program has kind of a unique funding thing. So by virtue of the fact that we had a master collaboration agreement between the 3 universities, the money will come to an investigator through a gifting mechanism, which means it's in a discretionary account that the investigator may use for any purpose that's allowed by the university. And that is and it's capped. There is a infrastructure charge, but it's a capped tax, and it won't affect, the Biohub will pay it. It won't incur it on you. Right. And then and so you could buy equipment with it. So you could spend it on equipment that is for a community purpose. This round of investigator applications is not meant for a shared equipment grant, like an S10 equivalent. That was not its intent. There may be things like that in the future, and white papers could be submitted for internal platforms that could be available to everybody. So we're thinking of mechanisms like that because we've heard this before. But this initial round is not meant to be an S10 surrogate.
Okay. So just a follow-up. If we decide to go and spend money in equipment out of that, but it is more than what is 1 year, can the budget be flexible so that it is shifted so that the purchase can occur
I think
upfront?
in the early years it might be possible to do that where the budget isn't so rigid. So I think if there's a special situation like that, let's talk. I mean, the beauty is it's a clean slate and there's only 2 employees there right now, me and Steve. So there's a lot of flexibility right now. I can't see out there.
I'm a professor of electrical engineering and computer science, and I work in robotics.
Cool.
Yes, indeed, very cool. I love it. The rumor has it, and that's why I want to ask this question, that you folks are preferred investigation on the cellular DNA, that level. I am interested in the body as a complex system, and I am interested in measurements that are non-invasive to have predictive models of individual, of how it can move around and dance and so forth and so on. Am I dreaming, or can I apply?
Nope. I think that I would encourage you to apply, and I think that but the ideas need to be audacious. Yeah. Sounds like you've got some colleagues who know you're audacious.
Okay.
But that's the minimum requirement. The internal launch projects, the cell atlas and the mapping and the ID projects, investigators are not tied to those. We do not expect to have applications that are meant to be compatible with those. We're looking for really different things. Like,
good.
Hand us something that's going to say, whoa, I've never seen that before.
Good. Thank you.
In a good way, hopefully. Let's get one. There's one more right then, and then we'll go up that way.
Hi. How much do you care about disease relevance versus basic science?
Like me personally?
No. No, not you personally. I mean, the applications, how important is it that they have a focus on human disease? Not important at all. Basic science.
So this is really great working with Priscilla and Mark. They get it. They understand that basic science, it may not have immediate translational impact, and maybe the consequences of the work aren't even imaginable until years later. I mean, you don't have to go too far into the CRISPR work with Jennifer to realize how true that is. And they get that. And so basic science, by all means, is a welcome applications. there's going to be no end of applied people who put in applied translation applications, but we, on purpose, will not have a bias in that direction. We'll look at them, and they'll be important to us, but basic science has to be really fundamental. I mean, it's really basic to what we do. It's got to be part of this program.
Okay, I agree.
Hi, my name is Dorit Hochbaum. I'm a professor of engineering, industrial engineering, operations research. I actually started the submission already, and I'm kind of a little bit stumped.
Oh, okay.
So I've been doing work on data mining and pattern recognition, and in the last year plus, I've been working with Harvard Medical School on neuroscience applications in signal extraction from calcium imaging. And the thing is that the work is very much just in the initial implementation. And I'm stumped because I've done lots of work on optimization and on algorithms, but it seems like I have to demonstrate finished work on medical applications.
Oh, no, that is not true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll go back and read the wording of the application. I wrote the application, so I'm responsible. It shouldn't say must demonstrate proven medical application anywhere in there. It is, what have you done that's significant in your past? What do you intend to do? What's the 5 most significant things you've ever done? And it doesn't have to be in any medical field, for that matter.
Okay.
Hi, thanks. Over here. Hi, thank you. Really appreciate you taking the time. Question for you, as we sit down to draft our 3-page statements, it would be really helpful to know who's going to be reading them and what that review process will look like.
Sorry, I didn't mention that. So we currently have we're in the midst of recruiting those reviewers. We have an initial target list of 110 reviewers. This is not a small task. And there'll be a multi-phase sort of review process where 110 reviewers will do the initial sort of triaging and grouping and putting into buckets based on sort of the kinds of ideas and disciplines and other things. And then there'll be a phase 2 that'll be a smaller set on the order of maybe 50 reviewers, so still pretty substantial, with equal representation from the 3 campuses. That's really important. And then at the final stage, maybe a review panel in the area of around 20 people. So again, reducing in size every time. And that's about the best I can describe it at this point. There'll be representation. We made sure that there's representation of all 3 campuses and all disciplines represented. And so, by the way, if you are a reviewer, you can't be an applicant. So I know that some of you will if you're not getting them already, you will be getting an invitation to be a reviewer. And if you want to be an applicant, you have to make that choice because we've just decided that you can't do both. We need help, so please don't everybody apply.
Joe, can you speak to how the projects are going to be evaluated with respect to existing funded projects that from NIH or Hughes or whatever funding agency that might be?
So we asked for a full CV, but we did not explicitly ask for the total current support, other support page, and a deep dive on what the competing sort of stuff in the field is. We felt that was sort of counter to. We didn't want to get into that. So instead, we're going to leave it up to those initial phase reviewers. We're going to give them explicit instructions that we want to see these audacious ideas and things that are out of the box, and it's up to them to do due diligence on whether some of these things are already happening or funded, and we're going to be asking them to comment explicitly on that. But we did not, if you're getting at the other support stuff and how well funded is a person and will that impact on whether they're going to get investigatorship, we're not actually taking that into account.
Okay, and you're not looking for completely new and different projects that are currently unfunded?
Oh yeah, no, that's the stuff close to my heart. Yeah, new projects not funded and probably wouldn't be funded. For risk-adverse reasons mainly.
A follow-up on the previous question about review. So will applicants receive a certain feedback from the review panel, especially in light that other the other search will be announced in the near future?
Yes. So we've struggled with this. We have not actually resolved how much feedback would be given. It's a lot of work, obviously, and it puts a burden on the reviewers and everybody else. And so we actually have not come to a conclusion about to what extent we're going to provide feedback and to how much. That's an ongoing debate within the committee right now, because it is hard. Question in the center over there.
I was wondering if you say something about junior versus senior applicants.
Okay.
Is there any advice you might have for those of us who have a shorter CV?
We are very supportive of early career scientists. That's something that we all really believe in. And we also realize the fact that many people who are transitioning from assistant to associate experience this big dip. You know, all the startup money's gone and they've hit the valley of death, and then they got to claw their way back up. And so those early career scientists are of interest to us. I won't say that we're going to have a quota or a bias towards them, but I can tell you that on the review committee, we all realize this is a problem. But we don't want to limit it. And so that's why we are open to all career stages. Because there are great ideas that come out of unexpected places all the time.
Thank you. My name is Malcolm Potts. I'm in the School of Public Health. And I understand that Mark Zuckerberg is concerned about the inequities that exist in the world. I think these are going to get very much worse in the next 80 years. I think it's really exciting to have somebody that looks towards the end of this century. But when you look at that, a lot of very serious things are going to happen. In 1990, there were 11 million malnourished children in Africa who were stunted. They're never going to reach their full potential. Today, there's 55 million. I know that Priscilla's a pediatrician. So I think there should be some attention in this, perhaps more to the ICC, but even in the Biohub, I'd like to be audacious and suggest that 1% of that money goes to look at these very, very big problems that are not high-tech, but I'm sitting next to one of the leaders in climatology. It's going to be perhaps very difficult to feed the world after 2050. Mm-hmm. So I think we should be looking at these, and I guess that Zuckerberg and Chan will also be interested in them. I don't know if you've talked to them about this. Thank you.
Yes, I would agree with everything that you just said, and you can bet that's one of the goals of the CZI Science, the larger nationwide, much larger endeavor. Those issues are very much on their minds, and Mark is no stranger to this. He spent a lot of time with Bill Gates, and they continue to spend time on how to strategize their two initiatives to work together, because the Gates Foundation also has a keen interest in many of these exact same issues, and so they are going to work together such that they productively synergize rather than stepping on each other's toes. And those conversations are happening right now. Wow, that's it? Okay. Well, I encourage anybody else to email me. I've been trying to email and actually, there's 2 email addresses now, okay? joe@czbiohub.org and joe at DeRisi Lab. DeRisi Lab, I wouldn't email that one because I'm still chair of the department and it's kind of a mess. But the other one, Biohub, I think you're the only people I've told about it now, so I guess I'm doomed. But email me there, and I'm going to answer every single question that comes in about the investigator program. I will not leave emails unanswered.